All right, so let's go over GitHub now. GitHub has become a very important force in software development, especially open source development. So the first thing to keep in mind that's always very confusing when you start to initially work with GitHub is Git and GitHub are very two different things. I want you to kind of think of the differences like Java and JavaScript. Java and JavaScript are completely different languages, and just because they both have Java in the name, it really doesn't mean anything. Java is compiled. It runs on a virtual machine. It's pretty robust, while JavaScript is a interpreted language. So one is object-oriented, one is prototypical. So very, very different, but serve a similar purpose. So version control, Git is a version control system that was originally developed by Linus Torvalds. And he did that to help with the development of the Linux kernel. So GitHub, on the other hand, is just a web application. That's all GitHub really is. It's just a web application that puts a fancy UI in front of Git. If you know how to use Git, then you pretty much know how to use GitHub because it's a lot of the same actions, but you just use your mouse instead of the command line. So GitHub is not the only game in town. There are lots of alternative companies that are doing version control as a service. There are GitLab, Bitbucket, as other examples. However, lots and lots of open source projects are hosted on GitHub, and it just happens to be the largest as of right now. But that could change very easily in the future. GitHub does provide a lot of cool features that are outside of Git, right? For example, GitHub Pages. GitHub Pages can't be created with just normal Git because normal Git is just a command line tool. It's not a web app. So using GitHub is pretty straightforward. Generally speaking, it's just a standard web UI. Most of the learning with GitHub just comes about with knowing where the buttons are, and most of that could just be Googled or looked up in the documentation. All the command line usage with Git also works with GitHub, because remember, all GitHub really is just a fancy UI over Git. So everything you learn on the command line is applicable to the web UI. One thing that GitHub adds as a bonus is it allows you to use GitHub Actions that you can build, where you can build, test, and deploy your code automatically. This is an extremely powerful setup to where if you have multiple teammates or multiple people in your company all writing code, every time they push the code, you can run automated tests so that you know your code is never broken. GitHub also provides project management and issue tracking as part of its complete package, which is separate from actual version control. So let's get to the meat, which is GitHub Pages. This is what we're going to create this module. So GitHub Pages are a great way to show off your work. They're a way for you to host a simple blog for free. And they can provide a landing page for your new library that your new JavaScript library that you wrote. So they're incredibly powerful. And most importantly, they're free, and they have pretty generous free allowances. Now, the only caveat is you're not, according to the terms of service, you're not supposed to run a company off of GitHub Pages. So for those of you who are thinking, hey, I can host a single page app on GitHub Pages and make lots of money, well, eventually GitHub will find that and boot you off. So it's strictly for blogging or creating landing pages, basically stuff that is not intended to be monetized. So let's go ahead and look at a demo that I set up of a GitHub page. So if we look over here, I have a account here called BSU Shane Panter. Okay, so that's my username. Now, in order to create a GitHub page, you have to create a special repository. In this case, you have to create a repository where it's username BSU Shane Panter .github.io. Now, once you create that repository, by default, it will go through and just publish the root directory. And here, in this case, I have my README that will be published. The config YAML is what sets up some of the settings of my GitHub page. Right now, I just have the Jekyll theme minimal, but you can dig into the config.yaml and do a lot of really cool stuff. So to actually get to the GitHub page, you can go to the repository, and you can go on to the actual IO page. In this case, I actually added a link, right? So I did a markdown link where you can see I have a markdown link. Okay. So if I click on that, you can see that now I am on the actual GitHub page. Now, right now I'm zoomed in. So if I hit reset, you can see this is what it looks like non-zoomed in. So this right here is what you need to submit for your homework. I want this URL. I want this URL. So this https:/bsushanepanther.github.io. That's what you need to submit. What I don't want is I don't want a link to your actual GitHub repository. In this case, this URL, github.com bsushanepanther, which is my username, and then the actual repo right here. I don't want this, because if you have this done correctly, then this will automatically show up. So hopefully that makes it all clear. And I encourage you to make your example page, make it your own. You can spend some time in making it your own theme, making it all fancy, however you feel comfortable, whatever you feel comfortable with. But the point of this assignment is simply just to get it up and running. So I look forward to seeing all the cool creative GitHub pages, and look forward to seeing the next module. Thanks.